Hello guys, and welcome to another episode, the second episode in fact within my new studio. Now I have lots of incredible videos due to be released shortly, but today I wanted to discuss a little bit about my journey and what has brought me to this way of living and what has brought me to teaching people the things that I teach. So let's get into this. So this used to be me. I was once clinically obese, type 2 diabetic. I suffered with chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, arthritic pains, daily debilitating migraines that would make me blind, for which I was on 3 different medications for. I suffered with severe teeth problems, boils all over my back and my face, severe skin conditions to which I used to have to use a medicated cream to treat, IBS, and the list goes on and on. Now, at my peak, I weighed 17.5 stone. Now, in these images, I was lower or less than 14 stone. And I know this because this image was when I did a charity skydive and I needed to be below a certain weight in order to do this. So I'd lost over 3 stone in order to do this. And as you can see, even there, I'm still very much overweight and not in a healthy place. Now, the migraines for me were incredibly debilitating. These migraines would make me blind every day. And again, I was on 3 medications for these. If I didn't take the medications, I would go blind on a daily basis. Quite often, I'd be bedridden for many days, losing many days in work. But out of everything that I suffered with, the worst thing for me was the anxiety. Now, the anxiety made me feel incredibly uncomfortable and it prevented me from leaving my house on many occasions. I spent lots of my time living in my house, in my box, if you like. I lived in my box, and the only time that I would leave my box was when I jumped into my car or my metal box. I would drive my metal box to my place of work, which was another big box. And I would work inside a small box inside this bigger box. My life was quite literally spent living in boxes. Now, I never felt worthy of the company of others, so I would never speak to people in my street, never speak to my neighbours, because I never felt worthy enough to speak with them. My life was quite literally spent living in boxes, in fear, if you like, of the outside world. Now, this isn't a good place to be. This isn't the place that I would recommend anyone want to live. It's incredibly debilitating. And it was indeed just this for me. It was absolutely debilitating. Now, I never once considered that the food I consumed contributed to the way that I felt. I always believed that I either had something wrong with me or there was a medication that I was not consuming that I needed to find. Despite trying all sorts of different medications, nothing ever worked until I made one big change. And this change was what I put into my mouth. I changed my diet. And when I changed my diet, some incredible things occurred. So within 12 months of changing my diet, I managed to lose over 107 pounds. I reversed my diabetes. I was now migraine-free, depression-free, anxiety-free, and more importantly, medication-free. All of these things that I suffered with suddenly went away. They didn't exist anymore. Now, this didn't happen overnight. It did take a considerable amount of time. And as I say, all of these things occurred within a 12-month period. Now, this image to the right, for full disclosure, this didn't take me 12 months. This took a lot longer than 12 months to achieve, 4 to 5 years, in fact. But I like the picture because I believe that it's something special that I achieved. And I'll explain why this is a special image to me as I travel a little bit deeper down my journey. But after I lost all of this weight, I felt like I'd found a secret that I wanted to tell the world about. I wanted to tell the world about my secret, something that no one else was talking about. Now, when I achieved all of these incredible things, I went back to my doctor and I said, "Hey doc, look at what I've achieved. I've lost all of this weight. I've reversed my diabetes. I'm now the healthiest and fittest that I've ever been within my life." And what he said to me was that the lifestyle I was living was unhealthy and I was consuming too much red meat. Red meat causes cancer. Too much salt caused high blood pressure. Yet I'd corrected my essential hypertension. I'd reversed my high blood pressure. He was telling me that the saturated fats that I was consuming were detrimental and were going to lead to cardiovascular disease. Now, at the time, I was not trained in nutrition. I had no training in nutrition or anything else in health-related matters for that matter. But I knew how I felt. I knew that I'd felt the best that I'd ever felt in my entire life. And no one, not even the doctor, could tell me that what I was doing was incorrect. This point that I had reached gave me incredible mental clarity. It's almost as if the fog was lifted and I could see clearly. My energy was through the roof. Aches and pains went away. Things that I'd suffered with my entire life had suddenly disappeared, that medication never managed to address. So despite friends and family and even my doctor being concerned with the lifestyle I was living, I decided to persevere. I decided to push forward, and I decided to teach other people what I had learned, to teach other people my secret, if you like. So I began retraining, and I retrained as a nutritionist, and we'll get into this as we go deeper down the journey. But as I'm learning more about nutrition, I understood that A gets me to C, but I wanted to understand the B. And what I mean by this is I knew that living the lifestyle made me feel this way. I knew that living my new lifestyle gave me this abundant amount of energy and mental clarity, and seemed to address almost every illness that I'd suffered with prior to this. But I didn't understand why, because it went against absolutely everything that I was taught prior to this. So this is what I mean about the B. I began to retrain as a nutritionist, and many other things downstream from this, which we'll get into as we go along my journey. But I wanted to understand the mechanisms involved. But along this way, I began working out again. I'd always worked out in the gym with very, very little success. But what I'd found was after adopting my new lifestyle, I managed to build muscle at an incredible rate. So I'd lost 107 pounds, and now I was gaining muscle, healing and repairing at an incredible rate. Yet I was always told that you cannot build muscle without carbohydrate. I decided to compete. I decided to compete as an amateur bodybuilder in men's physique. Now, this was a big thing for me, being someone who suffered with depression and anxiety. The thought of walking onto a stage in front of hundreds of people who are quite literally there to critique you. These people are not there to look at your physique and think, what a fantastic, incredible physique. These people are quite literally there to compare you to the person next to you, which is my worst nightmare. In order to do this was a big step for me. It was something well out of my comfort zone, but I decided to push forward. I decided to persevere, and I managed to gain some incredible muscle mass. Eventually, I went on to become an amateur bodybuilder, eventually a professional bodybuilder, and I was fortunate enough to become British and European champion at a professional level. So let's think about that for a second. I was unable to walk up the stairs in my mid to late 20s, suffered with these daily debilitating migraines, this anxiety and depression. And then suddenly I changed what I put into my mouth. And then suddenly I went on to become British and European champion at a professional level. And what an incredible feat. Now, this was absolutely mind-boggling to me. It's something that I could never comprehend. Yes, I worked hard for this. I worked incredibly hard. But the reason I did this was to show people that what I was consuming was truly making a difference. Now, I managed to achieve some incredible things, which I don't believe that competing in bodybuilding is healthy. I don't believe reaching these incredibly low body fat percentages are healthy. But I did it to prove something. I did it to prove my concept, if you like, that my new diet and lifestyle were incredibly beneficial to all forms of health and well-being. So what an incredible transformation. Now, after this, I decided to retire from bodybuilding, and now I do endurance events. I do a little bit of running and cycling, and there I'm pictured with a good friend of mine who is pacing me in the Newport 10K for a 37-minute 10K. Now, I'm fairly new to running, and coming from a bodybuilding background, running is not something that comes natural to me. But I decided to persevere this in order to show that this wasn't just specific to bodybuilding, but in fact you could translate this to anything, any form of sport, health and well-being. And this isn't just about sport, by the way. This is 100% to do with health and well-being. But I did this again for proof of concept. Now, over the 15-year period, I've been ketogenic and carnivore for well over a decade. And as you can see in the image on the right there, I have boils on my face. I look incredibly inflamed. And I think it's fair to say that I look far healthier on the image on the left. And this was taken recently on a podcast. And this is what it's done to me. This is what changing my diet has done to me. This is what changing what I've put into my mouth has allowed me to achieve. Now, when I was competing, this was taken on an in-body composition machine, and this measures your body fat percentage. It measures your visceral fat, which is 1. My body fat percentage there is 3, and my body fat mass was 2.3 kilograms. I had 2.3 kilograms of fat in my entire body, which is incredibly low. Now, this isn't healthy. For full disclosure, this is not healthy. But again, I did this in order to prove that my new diet and lifestyle allowed me to achieve incredible things. Again, it's proof of concept. I don't recommend anybody achieve body fat percentages of this low, not for health purposes, but living this lifestyle gave me an edge, if you like. It gave me an incredible advantage because I was now using a tool that others were not using. Others within the bodybuilding community are heavily carb driven with lean proteins, and I was carb free with high fats and high protein. So coming about this from a completely different angle, but it allowed me to achieve incredible things. Now, 3% body fat, which is in the image that you saw earlier on the earlier slide. When I competed, I estimate that I was around 2%. And again, just to reiterate, this isn't healthy, but it allowed me to achieve incredible things. And this was the transformation. So it allowed me to go from being clinically obese, type 2 diabetic, suffering with a myriad of health conditions, and gravitating towards becoming British and European champion as a professional bodybuilder. Now, many would argue that I am genetically gifted. Many would argue that this is in my genes. But I would argue the opposite, in fact. Now, this was my father, who died in his mid-60s from heart complications. Now, you can see in his face, that's me. This is where I was going. This was my fate. If I continued on my journey, this is where my genetics were taking me. But I didn't resign to this fact. I didn't resign to the fact that my genetics were enough to govern whether I was going to be clinically obese and type 2 diabetic and suffering with these illnesses for the rest of my life. And the reason that I managed to combat my genetics is through something called epigenetics. Now, epigenetics is something that I'm going to get into on another video, so keep an eye out for this. This is going to be an incredible video, which I'm going to release shortly, but let's not get too deep into this today. But for simplistic purposes, this is what my diet looked like when I was clinically obese and diabetic. It predominated carbohydrates with moderate amounts of protein and typically very, very low fat. And what change did I make in order to achieve these things? Well, in fact, it was quite the opposite. I adopted initially a low carb lifestyle, which through a series of incremental changes allowed me to become ketogenic, and I was living a ketogenic lifestyle there for many, many years. Now I'm carnivore, which is still a ketogenic state, by the way. It's a subsection of a ketogenic lifestyle, just the next level, if you like. But this involves essentially lowering carbohydrate. Now, glucose is essential, and this is what carbohydrate feeds the body. Carbohydrates break down into a sugar called glucose, and there are certain cells within the body that need glucose. So we do need glucose. Glucose is essential, particularly for the red blood cells and the glutaminergic neurotransmitters in the brain. So we do need glucose. But your body and my body make glucose. We make all of the glucose that we need through a process called gluconeogenesis, which again, this is a talk for another day. But in simple terms, A ketogenic lifestyle is lowering your carbohydrates to allow your body to burn fats for fuel. And this involves increasing your protein and increasing your fat consumption. Now, there are varying degrees of ketogenic lifestyles in regards to the volume of protein to fat ratios. I'm not going to get into this today, but essentially the thing that they all have in common is lowering the carbohydrate. Lowering the carbohydrate, allowing your body to burn fat for fuel. Now that I'd learnt all of this information, and again, I understood the A gets me to C, but I wanted to understand the B. So it's led me down a rabbit hole, if you like, and I'm so deep now down this rabbit hole that I feel like I've come out the other end. I'm addicted to learning. I'm addicted to study. And in fact, last year, I recorded over 750 hours of study in 2024 alone. This is an average of 2 hours of every day studying towards qualifications. And these qualifications are not just nutrition. The qualifications that I have gained are things like molecular biochemistry and epigenetics. And there are a few others in there also. But I'm addicted to learning. I'm addicted to teaching people how to improve their health and well-being. And this is what I do today. So I help others achieve the things that I've achieved. And this could be a number of things. This could be maybe weight loss. It could be hormonal corrections. It could be reversing diabetes. It could be autoimmune issues. And the list goes on and on. So these are a few people that I've worked with over the years. And this very good friend of mine, Sarah Davis. Sarah is a neurophysiologist. So a very intelligent person who works for the NHS. As you can see in the image on the far left, Sarah there is incredibly overweight and in fact type 2 diabetic. At that point, she had been diabetic for 23 years. Tried everything in order to reverse this, but with no success. Sarah came to see me. We made some simple changes to her diet. This picture was taken 11 months later. Just 11 months, less than 1 entire year of changing what she consumed without dieting, by the way, no dieting and no counting calories. This is not about caloric value. She managed to reverse her diabetes and soon after went on to represent Team GB in Ironman with her husband there, Mark. An incredible feat. Now, Sarah could barely walk a mile and now she's competing in Ironman at a very high level. And for those who don't know what an Ironman is, it involves a 2.5 mile swim in the sea, followed by a 112 mile bike ride, followed by a marathon. So an incredible feat for someone who could not even, or at least barely walk a mile. So these are the type of people that I work with. Your average Joe, if you like, people who suffer with weight problems, people who suffer with type 2 diabetes. I also work with athletes. And again, this is Mikey. This is the gentleman that you saw pacing me in the earlier slide in the Newport 10K. Now, Mikey came to see me as a vegan. Incredibly fit and healthy, an incredible athlete, but never stood on the podium, even in local events. Mikey came to see me at one of my talks. And in fact, it was a talk on athletic performance. The foundation for athletic performance is nutrition, because we need to be fit and healthy in order to perform at a high level. After visiting and listening to my talk, Mikey decided to gravitate deeper towards becoming low carb, moving on towards becoming dirty keto, standard keto, clean keto, and eventually carnivore. So 2 years down the line, Mikey went from never being placed in a race or any event to becoming #1 in Europe as an amateur. And this is him taking the #1 spot in Ironman Europe last year. Now, Mikey is also a world record holder. He went on to compete in the Kona World Championships and he is to date the fastest Welshman ever to complete the Kona World Championships. And again, his transition from vegan towards carnivore. So these subtle changes had allowed him to improve his athletic performance enough to compete at an incredible level. And there, he's carrying one of the products that I make, which are electrolytes, which we'll get onto as we go. Now, other things that I do, I work alongside people like the good Professor Tim Noakes. Tim Noakes is a titan within the nutrition industry. I do talks on his behalf online and within his group for the Noakes Foundation. Lots of other things that I do in regards to public speaking events. So this was taken last year at the Keto Brain Health. There I'm pictured on stage with my good friend Dr. Anthony Chaffee, the fantastic Zoe Harcoom and the incredible Ivor Cummins, and also Rachel Brown was also there. We were all there talking about the health benefits of ketones. So this is what I do. I speak at lots of public speaking events. I teach people on a daily basis and I consult 3 days a week. Now, part of my journey has seen me gravitate deeper down this rabbit hole and allow me to look for tools, if you like, levers that we can pull. And this allowed me to create and develop a range of products. So this is my brand. This is the Keto Pro. I produce products like electrolytes, MCT powder, exogenous ketones, and even keto bars. Now, my products, I believe, are the best on the market. We're multi-award winning, and I believe that these are genuinely the cleanest products on the market. Electrolytes in particular can be an incredible tool to use, especially during the transition from coming from a high carbohydrate lifestyle towards gravitating into low carb ketogenic based lifestyles. And the reason for this is that the sudden drop in insulin, when we reduce carbohydrate, insulin drops. Now, insulin is the main driver for essential hypertension or high blood pressure, if you like. And when we reduce the carbohydrate, insulin drops, and this signals the kidneys to release sodium from 4 points in the nephrons in the kidney. And this can lead to what is known as keto flu. And this can lead to fatigue, feeling nauseous, a general sense of not feeling incredibly well because we've just excreted and lost lots of sodium, which is an essential electrolyte. It's an essential mineral that we need, not just to survive, but thrive. So these products can help aid in the adaptation process, if you like. I produce this, which is MCT oil and powder, the world's highest purity. So my MCT oil and powder by certification is the highest purity available on the market. And these are things along with the exogenous ketones that can help you gravitate into lowering your carbohydrates and moving deeper into a ketogenic and maybe even carnivore way of living. Now, I also stock third-party brands, brands that produce products that I no longer consume, but products such as breads and wraps and porridges, which are low carb. So I no longer eat any of these products. I've gravitated so deep down my journey that I no longer require them. But for those who are restricting in the early stages, missing that bread, for example, and skipping that wrap or avoiding their favourite chocolate treat is incredibly difficult because sugar is a drug and it's arguably more addictive than heroin. So to come away from that is incredibly difficult. So as part of my third-party offering, we stock and supply these alternatives, if you like. You don't need to consume these to thrive in life. All we need is highly nutrient-dense animal proteins and natural fats, which we'll get into as we travel deeper down this journey on further episodes. But these are there should you wish to purchase them. Now, also, I'm live here on YouTube every Sunday with a good friend of mine, Stephen Thomas. We're live on YouTube at 7 p.m. every Sunday for live Q&A. We usually get a few hundred people on the live, so be sure to get your questions in early if you want them answered for free. After this, at 8 p.m. on Sunday, we're live in our private school group. Now, this is a paid service. It's only $20 a month, but we go live in this at least 2 times each week for live Q&A. There are lots of free courses, and it's a fantastic community in order to bounce off like-minded people, if you like, and it's a means for support moving forward. It's a fantastic network. So if you want to get your questions answered in more depth, then feel free to sign up to our private school group. This is the website for my Keto Pro products and the other third-party products, and this is a link to my private coaching. So I do consultations. I consult 3 times each week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and 1 day over the weekend. Sometimes it's Saturday, sometimes it's a Sunday. But within this, we go into 60 minutes in private Q&A. So we can really get into the weeds in regards to your personal needs. So if you feel like you need some private tuition, some private guidance, then we can really get into it through this link. All of these links are below, so if those are of interest for you, please feel free to check them out. Keep an eye out for future videos, lots of incredible information to be released soon. So thank you for listening, take care, and I will see you guys soon.